1964, Lauchhammer, East Germany. A state-owned factory called VEB Schwermaschinenbau Lauchhammerwerk finishes assembling a prototype, a bucket wheel excavator, type SRs 1500, 171 meters long, 50 meters tall, 3,850 tons of steel, painted blue. It is built to eat the earth, to strip away everything above the lignite seams buried beneath the Lusatian lowlands, so the German Democratic Republic can burn brown coal and keep the lights on. They give it a number, Bagger 1473. The workers give it a name, Das Blaue Wunder, the Blue Wonder. For 37 years, it does exactly what it was built to do. Then the wall falls, the coal stops mattering, and the largest abandoned machine in Germany is left to rot in a field, waiting for someone to either save it or cut it apart. As of today, nobody has done either. The German Democratic Republic ran on lignite, brown coal, the dirtiest, lowest-grade fossil fuel on the planet. Lignite has roughly half the energy content of hard coal and produces more carbon dioxide per unit of heat than almost any other fuel source. But it had one advantage that mattered to a country sealed behind an iron curtain. It was local. The Lusatia region of Brandenburg and Saxony sat on enormous deposits. No imports required, no Western currency, no dependency on Soviet supply lines. The German Democratic Republic just had to dig it up. And to dig it up at the scale their economy demanded, they needed machines that could move earth continuously. A dragline scoops one bucket at a time. A bulldozer pushes one pass at a time. East Germany needed something that never stopped. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, feeding conveyor belts that ran directly to power stations. That is what a bucket wheel excavator does. A rotating wheel fitted with buckets scoops earth as the wheel turns, dumping it onto a belt that carries it away without stopping. East Germany became the world leader in this technology, though leadership had nothing to do with ambition. It was desperation. By the 1980s, East Germany was producing over 300 million tons of lignite per year, more than any other country on Earth. The landscape of Lusatia was being consumed. Entire villages were demolished and relocated to make way for the expanding pits. Rivers were rerouted and forests were leveled to create space. The environmental destruction was systematic and deliberate, and it was all done to keep the power stations running. The machines that made it possible were bucket wheel excavators. Dozens of them operated around the clock in open pits that stretched for kilometers. The Blue Wonder was one of them. VEB Schwermaschinenbau Lauchhammerwerk was part of the Takraf Industrial Group, the state combine responsible for heavy equipment manufacturing. Lauchhammer had been building bucket wheel excavators since the 1920s. By the 1960s, the factory was producing machines for lignite operations across the Eastern Bloc. Bagger 1473 was a prototype for the 1500 series, larger and more capable than the previous generation. It was built for the Tagebau Muro mine, an open-pit lignite operation near the town of Finsterwald in Brandenburg. The machine was fabricated at Lauchhammer, then transported in components to the mine for on-site assembly. The assembly required specialized cranes and took months to complete. When it was finished, the excavator stretched longer than 1.5 football fields. The bucket wheel alone measured 12.5 meters in diameter. 10 buckets each held 1.5 cubic meters, 57 pours per minute. The theoretical mining capacity was 5,130 cubic meters per hour. The wheel boom extended 67 meters, enabling excavation heights up to 35 meters and depths down to 15 meters. The whole machine moved on 6 crawler track sections at a maximum speed of 6 meters per minute. Powered by electricity, it required 5,555 kilowatts, delivered through a 6 kilovolt cable that trailed behind it like an umbilical cord. A crew of 5 operated it around the clock, in 3 shifts. In 1965, Bagger 1473 went to work, first in the Horlitz subfield. Then from 1970, it worked in the Muro main field. Then from 1988, it moved to the Grossraschen subfield. For 34 years, it stripped overburden. Layer after layer of soil and rock peeled away to expose the lignite beneath. That coal fed the power stations that supplied electricity to the surrounding region. The Blue Wonder was not the largest bucket wheel excavator ever built. That distinction belongs to the Bagger 293, a 14,200-ton machine still operating in Western Germany. But within the Lusatian mining operations of the GDR, the Blue Wonder was a reliable workhorse that ran continuously for decades. It did the job it was designed for, in a country that needed every ton of coal it could extract. Then came November 9th, 1989. The Berlin Wall fell. Everything that sustained the Blue Wonder collapsed with it. German reunification didn't just change politics, it changed economics, overnight. Western Germany's coal industry had already been declining for decades, replaced by natural gas, nuclear, and imported energy. Eastern Germany's lignite operations were suddenly exposed to market forces they had never faced. The mines were inefficient by Western standards. The power stations were among the dirtiest in Europe. The equipment was aging, and the environmental damage was beyond anything the West had tolerated in generations. Entire villages had been demolished to make way for open-pit mining. Rivers had been diverted. Groundwater tables across Lusatia had been destroyed, dropping by meters across hundreds of square kilometers. The air quality near the power stations was catastrophic. Reunified Germany inherited all of it, and reunified Germany had no economic reason to keep it running. Western electricity was cheaper, cleaner, and already available. The new unified government began shutting down the worst operations. The Lausitzer und Mitteldeutsche Bergbauverwaltungsgesellschaft, known as LMBV, was established specifically to manage the closure and reclamation of former East German mining sites. Their task was enormous. Over 100,000 hectares of devastated land needed rehabilitation. Tagebau Muro was among the mines slated for closure. Coal mining at Muro ceased in 1999. But the Blue Wonder was not done yet. From 1999 to 2002, it was kept in limited service for recultivation work, reshaping the scarred landscape it had spent decades tearing apart. The machine that stripped the earth was now being used to put it back. In 2002, Bagger 1473 was officially decommissioned. And now came the question that follows every giant machine when the work runs out. What do you do with 3,850 tons of steel that can't drive on a road, can't fit on a rail car, and costs more to dismantle than the scrap metal is worth? 3 municipalities stepped in. Senftenberg, Großreichen, and Schipkau agreed on a joint action to preserve the excavator as a monument to the region's mining heritage. Between August 29th and September 15th, 2003, the Blue Wonder made its final journey. 8.5 kilometers crawling across industrial roads and LMBV-owned railway crossings from the Muro mine to a field near the Euro Speedway Lausitz motor racing circuit outside Schipkau. The move took 17 days. When it arrived, the municipalities planned to turn it into a tourist attraction and a monument to the men who operated it and the industry that defined the region for a century. That never happened. None of it materialized. The Blue Wonder sat in its field without a museum, without a visitor center, without a maintenance crew or a security guard. There it sat, exposed to rain, wind, frost, and the slow chemistry of oxidation. The blue paint that gave it its name began to fade and crack. Rust bloomed across the steel frame like a disease. Water pooled in the machinery housings. Electrical systems corroded. And then the urban explorers found it. In the mid-2000s, photographers and adventurers discovered the machine. They climbed it. They photographed it from every angle. The images spread across forums, social media, and YouTube videos with millions of views. The Blue Wonder became one of the most famous abandoned structures in Europe, often misidentified as Bagger 258, because of markings on an information plate that confused visitors and content creators alike. It became an icon of what the internet calls megalophobia, the visceral unease triggered by objects too large for the human mind to process comfortably. A 171-meter machine rusting in an empty field triggers something primal. Thousands of people visited. None of them had permission. They tagged the steel with graffiti. They stripped copper wiring for resale. They pried open access panels and stole instruments from the control room. Year after year, the damage accumulated, and the municipalities that had promised to preserve the Blue Wonder had no budget, no staff, and no plan to stop any of it. By January 2019, 3 municipalities announced that the Blue Wonder would be scrapped. The structure had deteriorated beyond what any reasonable budget could address, and vandalism had made it structurally unsafe for anyone to approach. Then something unexpected happened. The Brandenburg Landesamt für Denkmalpflege, the state office for the preservation of monuments, learned about the planned demolition from news reports. They issued a statement. Bagger 1473 had been recognized as a historically significant structure since 2002. It had simply never been formally placed on the protected monuments list because everyone assumed the recognition was sufficient. In February 2019, the Landesamt made it official. Bagger 1473 was now a legally protected historical monument. The demolition was halted, but protection on paper is not protection in practice. The municipalities that own the land have announced they intend to apply for removal from the monuments list. They cannot afford the machine, and they do not want the liability. As of 2025, the Blue Wonder stands exactly where it was parked in 2003, in a field near a racetrack in Brandenburg. There is no adequate fencing, no shelter from the weather, and not a single structural engineer or restoration plan on file. The rust deepens, the graffiti spreads, the steel weakens. Former miners who spent their careers operating machines like this one watch from a distance as their industrial heritage is consumed by neglect. The Blue Wonder is the perfect buried machine. Built by a country that no longer exists to burn a fuel the world no longer wants, in a mine that has been flooded and turned into a recreational lake. It did its job for 37 years and was rewarded with abandonment. 3 towns tried to save it and could not afford to. A government agency declared it a monument and walked away. The internet made it famous, and the fame attracted the people who are destroying it. 171 meters of East German steel, rusting in a field in Brandenburg, protected by law and abandoned in practice. That is the story of Bagger 1473, the Blue Wonder. The machine that outlived the country that built it, the mine that needed it, and the towns that tried to save it. It is still there, for now. If you are interested in the hidden stories behind machines that changed the world or were forgotten by it, subscribe. We are covering the equipment nobody else talks about.